Hey everyone! Today we're diving into another terrifying case. Please support my channel by hitting that subscribe button and turning on the notifications. Think about what you really know about abusive relationships, especially if you grew up in a loving home where your parents never raised their voices. Chances are, your understanding comes from things you've read online or heard in conversations with friends or coworkers. But abuse is a lot more than what you might think. It's all about controlling and restricting another person. Today, we're going to focus on one of the most brutal forms of aggression, and we'll keep coming back to it throughout this discussion: the restriction of personal freedom. Abusive people often feel entitled to control every aspect of their partner's life: who they talk to, who their friends are, where they go, what they wear, and what time they come home. Sounds awful, right? But what's even worse is that these people think they're being generous. In their minds, they're giving freedom by allowing their partner to do things that, in a healthy relationship, wouldn't even be up for debate. Our heroine refused to live by the rules that were forced on her, and it cost her her life. So, let's start the story and figure out if there really was abuse in this family, or if the public just wanted to paint the husband as an abuser to hold him accountable for his wife's murder. Cary, North Carolina, is the perfect town for quiet family life. It's so safe that after living there for years, people stop locking their cars or even the front doors of their homes. There's no crime or racial tension, great schools, open roads, and friendly, smiling neighbors. This is the town the Coopers chose to start their family and build a happy life. Brad and Nancy Cooper seemed to live the perfect life outside their home. Brad was a smart, successful IT engineer. Nancy was athletic, beautiful, fun, and the best mom to their two young daughters. They led a calm, quiet life. Brad worked, and Nancy took care of the house and the girls. Nancy, a former competitive runner, made sure she stayed in shape and took great care of herself. July 12, 2008, started out like any other day. Nancy went out for her morning run, but she never came back. What happened next is disturbing, complicated, and will leave you wondering what really happened. The story is so tragic that all it left Nancy and Brad's family with were questions and a small hope for justice. That afternoon, Jessica Adam called emergency services to report her close friend Nancy Cooper missing. Her voice shaking, Jessica told the dispatcher that Nancy had gone for a run at 7 a.m. but hadn't returned home. The two friends had plans to meet, but Nancy never showed. Even worse, Jessica had tried to reach her for hours, but neither Nancy's cell phone nor her home phone answered. Brad was at work and didn't take his wife's disappearance too seriously. He assumed Nancy had just taken a longer walk than usual and would be back soon. But even by evening, she still hadn't returned. To understand where Nancy might have gone, let's take a closer look at the history of the Cooper family, and maybe some answers will emerge on their own. In the 1960s, University of British Columbia graduate Harry Renz and Donna Audrey decided to make their relationship official by getting married. Over the next few years, they had 4 children, a son named Jeff and 3 daughters, Krista, Jill, and Nancy. Living in Edmonton, they raised their children in a loving, supportive home. In 1988, Harry and Donna started an employment agency that helped people in Alberta, Canada, with life management, job training, and employment services. Nancy Renz was born on October 25, 1973, as an identical twin to her sister Krista. Nancy met Brad Cooper in Calgary in 1998 when she was just 24 years old. Tall and dark-haired, Brad immediately caught Nancy's eye. But it wasn't just his looks that won her over. It was his calm, steady personality. He was reliable, like a rock. Nancy fell in love. The feeling was mutual. Nancy was also tall, blonde, fit, and had a quiet charisma that stirred something in Brad's heart. Their relationship moved quickly, and when Brad got a prestigious job offer from Cisco Systems in Raleigh, North Carolina, he wanted Nancy to move there with him. To make the immigration process to the U.S. smoother and to stay together, Brad and Nancy got married in the fall of 2000. At first, it might seem like they got married for immigration reasons so Nancy could move with Brad, but the couple had already been planning a wedding for the fall of 2002. After they moved to North Carolina, Brad started building his career at one of the largest companies, while Nancy was forced into the role of a stay-at-home mom. Brad's career took off. At Cisco Systems, he became a specialist in combining internet technologies and phones, working as a VoIP engineer and architect. Brad was one of just 152 experts in networking technology. The family lived comfortably. Each of them had their own BMW in the driveway, but Nancy became a prisoner in her own home. To be in the U.S. as a Canadian citizen, you can visit, but you can't work without a permit. Over the next few years, the couple had two beautiful daughters, Bella in 2004 and Katie in 2006. Neighbors said Nancy was a loving and hands-on mom who spent lots of time playing with her kids at the playground. But she didn't have a job, and she really couldn't, since she didn't have a U.S. work permit. Sure, she was still a Canadian citizen, and she could have found some under-the-table job to earn a little cash. But Nancy dreamed of having a career and being more than just a wife and mom. Now, let's talk about Brad. Bradley Graham Cooper was born in the early 1970s in Medicine Hat, Alberta. After high school, he earned a Bachelor of Science degree in computer science from the University of Calgary. After graduating, he landed a job at Trans-Canada Pipelines as a network engineer. In 1998, he crossed paths with Nancy Renz, and sparks flew instantly. Over time, he grew close not only to Nancy, but also to her family, including her parents, impressing them with his tech skills by helping with their computers and joining in all the family events. His talent and expertise eventually earned him a job offer from Cisco Systems in Raleigh, North Carolina. In 2005, Brad began working toward an MBA at North Carolina State University's College of Management. He went on to complete the degree, specializing in product innovation. While Brad's career was skyrocketing and he kept adding to his skill set, Nancy became his shadow. She had to give up her dreams and her own career. Nancy was once a runner who had hoped to compete in the Olympics. A bad knee ended that dream, but she still ran marathons and other races, bringing new people into the running community and making new friends, something that annoyed the more introverted Brad. Before long, their relationship started to deteriorate. According to friends, cracks in Brad and Nancy's marriage were there from the beginning, but Nancy never aired their issues in public and tended to idealize her husband. On the surface, they still seemed like the perfect family. But as Brad climbed the corporate ladder, he became more controlling and manipulative with Nancy. To him, she seemed like a boring housewife who had lost her spark, spending her days cleaning and taking care of the kids. Things got even worse when Nancy found out that her husband had been cheating on her with her close friend Heather in the spring of 2007. Brad denied it for months, but on New Year's Eve, he finally confessed, admitting to the affair but insisting it had only happened once, as if that somehow made it better. So, one time doesn't count, right? The couple decided to work on their marriage and started going to couples therapy, where Brad admitted he had lied and told Nancy that his affair with Heather had been going on for a long time. After that truth came out, they decided to split up and sell the house. Nancy planned to move back to Canada with the kids. But Brad wasn't willing to give up custody of the girls or let them go to Canada. So, to get back at her, he canceled Nancy's credit cards and made sure she couldn't take any further steps. Nancy was left alone in a foreign country, with 2 young kids and no money to survive. Now, let's go back to Nancy's disappearance. When people learned about the couple's rocky marriage, Nancy's friends and authorities immediately suspected Brad Cooper had something to do with her going missing. Nancy's parents, Harry and Donna Rentz, became even more worried when they got the news that their daughter was missing. They immediately planned a trip to Cary to help search for her. When Nancy didn't show up by late evening, police came to the Coopers' home and questioned Brad about his wife. He told them that on Saturday morning, she got up earlier than usual and went for a run with a friend. Brad also mentioned that Nancy never took her cell phone or keys with her. He said she also skipped her usual routine of driving to a coffee shop to meet her running partner. This experienced runner, who had been training for a half marathon, apparently changed her route that day and didn't run on one of her usual trails. The police listened to Brad's story, but they were clearly surprised, since no one other than Brad had seen Nancy that day. The cops needed solid proof to back up Brad's claim that she left the house at 7 a.m. Where were the witnesses, besides her husband, who saw her leaving, getting into a car, or even just walking down the street that Saturday morning? There weren't any. No one had seen Nancy since Friday night when she spent time at a friend's house across the street. Brad claimed she had plans to meet a friend later that day, which was actually her usual running partner. A search party was organized to find the missing runner. Could she have run away to escape her troubled marriage? Not without her kids, her friends would have said. After several days of intense searching, Nancy Cooper's body was found about 3 miles from her home, off her regular running route. A man walking his dog discovered her lying face down in a drainage ditch. He saw her body in a stormwater drain. She was wearing only a sports bra, and there was a single diamond earring in one of her ears. The medical examiner determined that the cause of death was strangulation, and her hyoid bone was broken. There were no other injuries or signs of sexual assault on her body, but every murder has a motive, and the police needed to find it. Once Nancy's body was found, many people immediately pointed the finger at Brad. He was the most obvious suspect. Shortly after, Cary investigators confirmed her death was a homicide. Police searched the couple's home and seized several items as part of the investigation. They reported that Nancy Cooper's phone and keys were found inside the house, though her friends told the police she always took them with her. When police interviewed Brad Cooper on the day his wife went missing, they noticed some small red marks and scratches on the back of his neck. This was noted in the police report, but no official explanation was given. It also became clear that no one other than Brad Cooper had seen Nancy after she left the Friday night party at a neighbor's house, which she attended alone. Although a friend did speak with her on the phone at 10:30 p.m. that same night, no one saw her after that. Investigators kept searching for evidence related to Nancy Cooper's death and worked quickly to identify their prime suspect. And it didn't take long for them to find one. The relationship between the couple caught the investigators' attention, and more importantly, Brad was the last person to see Nancy alive. In homicide investigations, the husband is usually the first person they rule out before they can move on to other suspects. The evidence led the police to issue overnight warrants to search the Coopers' home, their 2 cars, and Brad Cooper himself. It was clear the police were in a hurry to treat the family home and the cars as potential crime scenes. They used luminol to check for bloodstains and searched for other evidence in the house or one of the cars. They also collected Brad's hair, fingerprints, and DNA for comparison with evidence they might find at the crime scene or where the body was found. They also planned to inspect and photograph any cuts, scratches, or other marks on Brad's hands and body. Remember, the Coopers were married, lived in the same house, and often shared a car, so any physical evidence connected to the crime would first need to be explained in the context of normal family life. And some odd details did come to light. Investigators found out that on the day Nancy disappeared, Brad had spent the morning doing laundry, vacuuming, and mopping the floors. He didn't deny that he had bought bleach and other cleaning supplies the day before. The police found it unusual that he was deep cleaning the house on the very morning his wife went missing. Of course, we don't know if Brad Cooper actually bought the bleach with any sinister intent. The police did take several boxes and bags of potential evidence from the Cooper home, all of which needed to be processed to see if they had any connection to Nancy's death. The information Brad Cooper provided about the extensive cleaning of the residence doesn't match up with what we learned from interviews with people who knew Brad and Nancy during their marriage, the police stated in written testimony. The police also reported that Brad had cleaned the trunk of his wife's car but not the interior. Brad claimed he had spilled gasoline in the trunk, but the police didn't detect the smell of either gas or cleaning fluid. Prosecutors stated that at the time of Nancy Cooper's death, the couple, both Canadian citizens, were in the process of separating, with plans for Nancy to return to Canada with their kids. However, in April 2008, Brad changed his mind, removed Nancy's name from their bank accounts and credit cards, and took the kids' passports to prevent her from leaving. As part of the investigation, Brad's computer was searched for documents that might contain information on how to kill someone or dispose of a body. Detective Adam Dismukes said during cross-examination that certain areas of the couple's home, including the front hallway, suggested a possible struggle when Nancy returned home from the neighbor's party. As they reviewed dozens of photos taken at the Cooper house, while the case was still being treated as a missing persons investigation, Brad's lawyer, Howard Kurtz, questioned Detective Dismukes, trying to argue that the evidence didn't point to Brad's guilt. The photos showed that some things had been moved or changed between the afternoon of July 11, 2008, when Nancy was home, and the next day. Decorative ducks that had been on the credenza and bamboo sticks in a vase in the foyer were missing in one of the photos, leading the detective to believe a struggle might have taken place there. But Howard Kurtz argued that other items in the hallway weren't disturbed, including a lamp. He pointed out that there were no scuff marks on the floor and that the police never searched for the missing items. Other things in the house, Kurtz said, also remained untouched, like a glass coffee table and a lamp in the living room, as well as a computer in the home office. During a later interview, according to Dismukes, Brad Cooper said he felt the investigators already saw him as a suspect when the police searched their home. Based on police testimony, Brad Cooper strangled his wife in their Cary home and dumped her body a few miles away. "I believe Nancy Cooper came home early on the morning of July 12th, and Mr. Cooper killed her," said Detective Adam Dismukes. After gathering enough evidence, 37-year-old Brad Cooper was arrested in October 2008, more than 3 months after his wife Nancy Cooper was found dead 3 miles from their home in Cary. However, his trial didn't start until over 2 years later, in March 2011. During the 36-day trial, both the prosecution and defense presented their cases to the jury. Even though Brad maintained his innocence, the jury found him guilty of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison. The evidence presented during the trial suggested that Brad had been having an affair and was becoming increasingly controlling and abusive toward his wife. The prosecution argued that he killed Nancy to get rid of her and continue his affair. Brad eventually cut Nancy off from their joint bank accounts, and she had told people she wanted to return to Canada with their 2 kids. According to jury foreman Andy Gilbert, the jurors came into the trial with an open mind. Brad Cooper was innocent until proven guilty. In particular, the testimony of 2 FBI agents revealed internet searches on Brad's laptop, including maps of the area where Nancy's body was found. The evidence presented by Special Agents Gregory Johnson and Chris Chappelle influenced the outcome of the case, said Andy Gilbert. It made a lot of the other circumstantial evidence more relevant and credible. Brad had initially agreed to the divorce and splitting up their assets, but he changed his mind when he realized how expensive it would be. Defense lawyers argued that the couple had financial troubles, and Brad took such steps to protect them from financial ruin. They also claimed he had changed his mind about Canada because he realized he wouldn't be able to see his kids as often as he wanted. In 2011, Brad pled not guilty, but was convicted after the jury reviewed the evidence. The jury of 10 women and 2 men took about 10 hours over 3 days to reach their verdict. On May 5th, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole after the longest non-death penalty murder trial in Wake County. Nearly 100 witnesses testified over the 36 days as prosecutors tried to prove that an angry, frustrated Brad Cooper, fed up with his wife, planned and carried out her murder in the early hours of July 12, 2008. After the verdict, Nancy's parents filed a petition in court. They alleged that Brad had been involved in an affair, had yelled at Nancy, and verbally abused her. They also claimed Brad was emotionally unstable and a danger to the kids. Court documents revealed that Brad had attempted suicide multiple times as a teenager and again more recently, the previous winter. In 2013, he appealed to have his conviction overturned, and the case was reviewed for a retrial. While awaiting trial, he pled guilty to second-degree murder and received a sentence of 12 to 15 years, including time already served. Meanwhile, Brad continued to fight Nancy's family for custody of their 2 daughters. However, his guilty plea forfeited his rights, allowing Nancy's twin sister to take custody of the girls. Defense lawyers believe they have a strong chance of appealing the conviction, claiming that the jury was never allowed to see evidence proving that Brad's laptop had been tampered with. They also argued that the police ignored evidence in their investigation that could have helped identify Nancy's real killer or killers, focusing solely on their "Brad did it" theory. So, who is Brad Cooper? Victim of circumstances or a cruel tyrant? It's known that Brad Cooper attempted suicide as a teenager and threatened to kill himself in the winter of 2008, but suicidal tendencies often point to manipulative motives, a way to prove something to someone when arguments and strength to fight are gone. Bradley continued to maintain his innocence throughout the trial, but in 2015, he finally confessed to killing Nancy, admitting he strangled her during an argument and dumped her body in a drainage ditch. At 40 years old, Brad Cooper pled guilty in Wake County Superior Court to the murder of his wife, Nancy, back in 2008. He had originally been convicted of first-degree murder in 2011, but the North Carolina Court of Appeals overturned that conviction. Judge Paul Gessner then sentenced Cooper to 12 years in prison, giving him credit for the 5 years he had already served. Brad Cooper remained in the Wake County Justice Center under a deal that reduced his life sentence without parole after he pled guilty to second-degree murder. Following his successful appeal of the first-degree murder conviction in 2011, his sentence was reduced to a minimum of 12 years. The unfaithful husband confessed to killing his wife only years after dumping her body, dressed only in a bra, in a drainage ditch, before reporting her missing after a run. Brad answered yes when the judge asked if he had killed Nancy, the mother of their 2 children, and hidden her body at a construction site in Cary, North Carolina in 2008. This was the first time he had admitted to the crime in court. According to prosecutors, Brad, now in his 50s, was having affairs with several women, including a neighbor, while his wife was trying to end the marriage and move back to Canada. As part of the agreement, Cooper also gave up his parental rights to their daughters, Katie, now 8, and Bella, now 10, allowing them to be adopted by Nancy's twin sister, Krista Lister. After the hearing, Nancy's father, Harry Renz, said, "When we started this process many years ago, I said I wanted the person responsible for this crime to come forward, admit guilt, and acknowledge their actions. Finally, that's happened." Nancy was a 34-year-old athlete and mother of 2 young girls. She was in a troubled marriage and had asked her husband to move out and let her leave their home, but he refused and dealt with it in his own way. After serving his 12-year sentence, Bradley Graham Cooper was released from the Mountain View Correctional Institution in Spruce Pine, North Carolina, on November 23, 2020. Immediately upon release, he was taken into custody by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement to begin the process of deporting him back to Canada. As of now, he reportedly lives in Canada but has no rights to contact either of his daughters. These days, it seems he prefers to stay under the radar and avoid public attention. People in Brad Cooper's position need to learn how to meet their needs in relationships honestly, how to compromise, communicate, and listen, and how to build connections where they're also heard and understood. It's harder than getting your way through manipulation, but it's far more productive and offers a real chance for closeness, self-awareness, and freedom from the crushing weight of loneliness. Nancy's murder is a case of domestic violence at its worst, and I urge anyone in a difficult relationship right now to take the steps necessary to ensure their safety. Don't wait, and don't think it couldn't happen to you. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. There are a lot of shocking stories coming up.